Hello, I'm Shelly. We're back today talking about what's going on in Texas. First, let me say, you may want to do this at 2 times speed because of my speech issues. Losing speech, being in therapy, and the videos really helped me to build my skills back and to become more fluent. We're going to talk about it today. The reporters are asking over and over at the briefings what happened, where were the failures, what was going on. Because we did learn, I think it's in the town of Comfort, they had sirens at a couple locations at their volunteer fire department, and they didn't lose any lives. So that shows you, of course, the river was not as high in Comfort as it was where the two forks met in the Guadalupe at Camp Mystic. And there were 18 camps along that line. So let's talk about it. First, there was the hurricane that hit Mexico. And most of the time, our country doesn't cover hurricanes. I don't want that. There we go. Trying to figure out how to not have that reflection, but let's go with this. Our country doesn't cover hurricanes that hit Mexico or other weather places, but for Texas, Mexico is really close. We have a very long border. So the Hurricane Barry was not very large. It hit Mexico, and as the hurricanes get to the land, they begin to break up, but there's still heavy storms with lots of water in any size, and that becomes like a tropical depression. So that hurricane, as it was falling apart, floated up to the hill country, and meteorologists weren't sure, if it was going to stall out there. It's hard to tell, and look at the atmospheric pressure and what's going on in the area. So forecast is just a forecast of what meteorologists think is probably going to happen from their years of expertise. So there was some failure there, and the reasons that we experience failure there is because we've always relied on our National Weather Service to help us to be aware and have alerts sent out and have messages. In my area, there are so many tornadoes. Sometimes when we get a tornado warning on the ground, we check our radar on our phone to see if we're in the area and to take cover. So, or if we take cover, then we check our phones to see what the weather is and where the tornado is touching down. And I think, as I told you yesterday, if you didn't watch that, there are floods in our area, not as dramatic. But part of my property is on a floodplain, so I won't be able to build back there. It wouldn't be safe. Now, DOJ and FEMA and our National Weather Organization, or DOJ was cutting those drastically. A president, this is not partisan, I'm just telling you the truth, and you can go back and look on videos, was saying that FEMA was a failure, and they're cutting back on FEMA to eliminate it at some point. Our National Weather Service was gutted as soon as Trump came into office. DOJ was going in, and fortunately, I didn't realize it only cut 25%. But in that time, they also allowed people to retire early with a bonus. And many of our more seasoned, more knowledgeable meteorologists took that early retirement. So in Central Texas, in the hill country, there was a position open, but they couldn't fill it because of the government freeze on funding. And losing 25% of your staff has made it really hard for others to fill in. And they've had to move younger people to help in those positions. So not only, it was a perfect storm. Not only did we have the hurricane that floated up as it became a tropical storm, and as it moved into Texas, was floating along, dumping lots of rain, but just stalled out right over the Camp Mystic area and all of those areas that the Guadalupe River goes through. And if you look on the map, the hill country, if you're not familiar with it, is small, mountainous, compared to other mountains in our United States. That word is just not used, but it might help you to envision that. So the watershed, when it's just setting over dumping water, it doesn't absorb water because of the ground below it is pretty rocky. So the water runs off. Obviously the trees in the highlands are going to catch some water, but if they're on the side of the tributaries, the ravines, the small, all of them that are flowing down that dump into the Guadalupe, it just runs off quickly. So it's not like the terrain that would be along a flatter area, which is around in these areas. So the flooding is not as dramatic, and I'm used to that. Yesterday I talked about some safety issues and some things that you can do, because I wanted you to have positive information of what you can do during this dramatic storm or dramatic disaster that has tugged at our heartstrings. So, looking at the answers, what to do. I'll briefly tell you about my experience in Hawaii and how their system works along a river there from a hike. And I also mention Comfort, Texas, the volunteer fire department, which raises money, from basic a chili supper, basic kind of things that the community can support. Often they just don't have very much money available to assist in systems that would be a loud warning to people. In Kerr County, there had been talk a few years back of installing a system that would be like a tornado warning that blares so loud up and down the river, there's no mistaking that you've got to get up and get to higher land. All they had was the telephones. And they did send out some alerts. A lot of people didn't receive them because the cell reception is not strong in that area, and that's typical of very sharp hills, that it's difficult to provide a good system for Wi-Fi. But obviously that can be improved too, and should have been improved. This was bigger than anything else they've ever experienced, and I believe now they're going to do the right thing and install systems that alert people in a dramatic way that you couldn't miss the alert, because it sounds a blare horn. If you've not been in a tornado area, they are very, very loud. You can't sleep through it, which is the purpose. So, the state of Texas has lots of money. That's often well known. If you live in Texas, we don't pay Texas income tax like many states do. We only pay federal income tax. And part of the reason is Texas has a lot of money. Anytime they really get to talking about teacher raises, with things that are happening all over, Texas is saying yes to teacher raises, even during this time. So it's not that a deficit is part of our state. This state could be a country with the amount of money they have available. But they didn't earmark money to install warning systems for a flood in our worst flooding place. But that'll be different. Places had filed for grants, but the grants were that kind of safety prevention measures, dried up quickly. Not much money was put in that area, and I guarantee you it'll be different now. I wish, and I'm sure all of you agree, it would have been different before this flood. And also the campers, they were not allowed to have cell phones. The idea during camping time is to unplug electronically, engage with the nature, learn new skills, develop good friendships, and as they have camp counselors that have maybe like 10 of their campers to one counselor, and they do so many different activities that they teach students how to be kind and loving and experience major things that with all of our testing, I'm a retired teacher, there's not enough time to really teach some of those valuable lessons. They say, well, they can learn it at home because they're teaching things that are going to be tested, teaching to the test, and that is very sad. Our representative I'm in touch with pretty often, and that's one thing he is working to. He's presented bills to abolish our Texas assessment test that we give because it's taking away from valuable teaching time. The last thing I want to tell you is when I did part of my master's classes in Hawaii. It was on Oahu, where Honolulu is. I enjoyed hiking. They encourage being in nature, and that's been quite a few years ago. There's a Manoa Cliff Trails that I lived nearby. It was gorgeous, just amazing. And you would hike up the mountain and go through bamboo forest, and the sound was just incredible, and you end up at a vista that you can see all of Honolulu and Diamond Head. You can see over to Pearl Harbor, which is a big drive. So that was one good place that I hiked. The other one that I loved was called Sacred Falls. It was on the north side of the island, where they have the final surfing competitions were held on the north side because the waves are tremendous there. And next to the North Shores is Sunset Beach. Between those, there is a 2-mile hike that's available for anyone to hike into Sacred Falls. So if you're very hot and sweaty on your 2-mile hike, the cold water at Sacred Falls is out of this world. It is amazing. So it was one of my favorite hikes. But let me let you know about the safety mechanisms that were in place there at Sacred Falls. There were times that it could flood. It went to the ocean, and the tropical mountains above sometimes have more water than other times. Most of the time it was fine, but that 2% of the time that it floods, there are many signs of caution before you enter that you have to walk past from the parking. To read about the dangers of flooding, tells you what to do. And then along the hiking path, you cross over the river several times, And often it could be dry. There's not enough water to flow to the ocean. But you have more signs, and then you have like fire alarm places that you pull the alarm. And it's also tripped by a governing feature on the islands to make sure that nobody has ever hurt. And definitely there's never been loss of life. But there are posts at about every football field long, or maybe less, each way that have fire sirens on top. And the post may only be 15 feet high. It's not way up there. And you're going to see all the lights and the sounds. And it tells you to get to higher ground. And they've made places where you can easily get to higher ground. It might be a little hard climb, but there are trees that you can catch onto and pull yourself up, and you get a lot of early warning. So when this happened with this tragedy in Texas, my mind went to that. What can we do? I contacted my representative and let them know that I'm available to be on a committee to study that, and I did that because I have experience to see how strong safety can be in areas, and I'm sure Texas will definitely step up. I just hate that it didn't happen prior to this event. So as we research more information comes out. There could be something that I've said that has not been 100% verified. I work very hard to research and make sure that any information I share on my channel, that you can bank on that. So I just wanted to warn you, and any more information you have, please put below in the comments so that we can share that with everybody that watches these videos. I thank you. I ask you to please like this video, and if you find it valuable, hit subscribe so that we can send this out so people will be able to be aware of the cause, why this happened, and be knowledgeable about what we can do in the future to protect each other. Thank you.